He was my mentor, until he whispered he loved me. I was just a 20-year-old sophomore, sitting in the front row of his lecture hall, hanging on to every word Dr. Elias Carter spoke. His voice was like velvet, smooth and deliberate, wrapping around complex literary theories like they were poetry meant only for me. His eyes were sharp, cutting through the room like he could see into your soul, and at 38, he was untouchable, a god in our small liberal arts college in upstate New York. Everyone admired him, students and faculty alike, whispering about his brilliance, his charisma, the way he could make even the densest texts feel alive. I admired him too, but not the way they thought, not at first. It started innocently enough, small moments that felt like nothing at the time, a late-night email about my essay, his feedback sharp but encouraging, a lingering glance during office hours that made my heart skip, a comment that felt too personal, too warm. Then came the moment that stopped my heart. It was a rainy afternoon, and I was in his office, the door closed, discussing my midterm paper. He was pacing, his usual composed self fraying at the edges. He stopped, looked at me, and said, "Clara, what I feel for you, it's wrong, but I can't stop." My breath caught in my throat. The air in the room felt too thick, the walls too close. I should have run. I should have gone straight to the dean, reported him, ended it right there. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, drawn to the danger, the thrill of being seen by someone like him, someone who held my future, my grades, my dreams in his hands. How do you say no to that? That one whisper sparked a secret that consumed us both, a forbidden dance of stolen glances, coded messages, and a love that could destroy everything we'd built. By the time it was over, I wasn't the same naive girl who walked into his class, wide-eyed and eager. And he? He lost everything, his career, his marriage, his reputation. Want to know how it all fell apart? Stick around, because this story isn't what you think. It's not a fairy tale, not a romance novel. It's raw, messy, and it broke us both. Let me take you back to that fall, my sophomore year. I was Clara, a literature major at a small college where ivy clung to brick walls and gossip spread faster than the wind. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your business, where secrets didn't stay secret for long. I wasn't the star student, not yet, but I was hungry for it. I wanted to be noticed, to stand out among the overachievers who filled the lecture halls. That's why I signed up for Dr. Elias Carter's advanced literary theory class. He was a legend on campus, the kind of professor who could make Foucault sound like a love letter, who could unravel Derrida with a single sentence. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and a quiet intensity that made you lean in, he had this way of making you feel like you were the only one in the room when he spoke. I'd heard the rumors, students giggling about their crushes, whispering about late-night study sessions that felt more like intellectual seduction than tutoring. I rolled my eyes at the stories. I was there to learn, to soak up his brilliance, not to swoon like some lovesick freshman. The first day of class, I sat in the front row, notebook open, pen ready, determined to prove myself. He walked in, adjusted his glasses, and launched into a lecture that felt like a performance. I was hooked, not on him, not yet, but on the way he made ideas come alive, the way he wove words into something tangible, something I could feel. After class, I stayed to ask a question about my essay, nervous but eager. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed, and listened like my words were the only thing that mattered. "You've got a sharp mind, Clara," he said, his eyes lingering just a second too long. My cheeks burned, but I told myself it was nothing. He was just being kind, encouraging a student. That's what professors did, right? Weeks passed, and those moments started to pile up, each one a tiny spark I couldn't ignore. A comment on my paper that read, "This is brilliant, let's discuss further." An email inviting me to a guest lecture off campus, his tone professional but warm. A brush of his hand when he passed me a book during office hours, his fingers grazing mine for just a moment. Each one felt electric, like a secret I wasn't supposed to know. I told myself I was imagining it. He was my professor, married, with a life I knew nothing about. I'd seen his wedding ring, a thin gold band that caught the light when he gestured in class. He was 38, a world away from me at 20. This wasn't a movie, not some romantic fantasy. This was real life, and real life had rules I'd always followed. But I started noticing things. The way he'd pause when I spoke in class, his eyes softening. The way his smile changed when I walked into his office, like he'd been waiting for me. I'd catch myself daydreaming about him, imagining conversations we'd never have, then shake it off, guilty for even thinking it. I was Clara, the good student, the rule follower. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. But then, one rainy afternoon, everything changed. I was in his office, discussing my midterm paper. The door was closed, unusual, but not unheard of. He was pacing, talking about my analysis of Barth's, his voice animated but strained. He stopped, mid-sentence, and looked at me. Really looked at me, like he was seeing something he'd been trying to ignore. "Clara," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I'm struggling here. I know I shouldn't, but I feel something for you." My heart stopped. The room felt too small, the air too heavy. I wanted to laugh it off, to pretend I misheard, to run out the door and never look back. But I didn't. Deep down, I didn't want to. I stood there, staring into his eyes, and felt something shift inside me, a spark catching fire. That moment in his office was the line we crossed, the point where everything spiraled out of control. I didn't say anything back, not right away. I just stared at him, my pulse hammering in my ears, torn between shock and something else, something I didn't want to name. Longing? Desire? Curiosity? It was all of those, tangled together, pulling me toward him even as my mind screamed to stop. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, stepping back, running a hand through his hair, his composure crumbling. "That was inappropriate. Forget I said anything." "But how do you forget something like that?" His words were a match, and I was kindling, waiting to catch fire. I left his office in a daze, the rain soaking through my jacket as I walked across campus, my mind replaying his voice, his eyes, that moment. I should have gone straight to the dean, reported him, ended it right there. But I didn't. Instead, I lay awake all night, his words echoing in my head, "I feel something for you." It was wrong, dangerous, forbidden, but it made me feel alive in a way I'd never felt before. I'd always been the good girl, the one who followed the rules, got the grades, kept her head down. I was Clara, the straight-A student who never stepped out of line. But this? This was a secret I wanted to keep, a thrill I wanted to chase. The next week, I went back to his class, telling myself it was just to learn, to pretend nothing had happened. But when our eyes met across the lecture hall, I knew we were both lying to ourselves. He was mid-sentence, explaining semiotics, when his gaze locked on mine, just for a second, and I felt it, a pull, like gravity. After class, he asked me to stay, his voice careful but urgent. "Clara, I meant what I said," he whispered, the door closed, the room too quiet. "But we can't. You know that, right?" I nodded, my throat tight, but my heart was screaming something else. I wanted to know what it felt like to be wanted by someone like him, someone who saw me, really saw me, not just as a student but as Clara, the person. I wanted to feel that spark again, to lean into the danger, even if it burned me. It started small, so small I could almost convince myself it was innocent. Late-night emails about books turned into personal messages, his words shifting from academic to intimate. "What do you dream about, Clara?" he'd write, and I'd respond, hesitant at first, then bolder, pouring out thoughts I'd never shared with anyone. We'd meet at a coffee shop off campus, pretending it was about my research, but the way his knee brushed mine under the table, the way he'd lean in when he spoke, it wasn't about research. It was about us, tiptoeing around a line we both knew we shouldn't cross. Each meeting felt like a stolen moment, a secret we were building together, brick by brick. I'd tell myself it was harmless, that we were just talking, just connecting. But deep down, I knew better. I saw the way his eyes lingered, the way his voice softened when he said my name. I felt the way my heart raced when he was near. This wasn't just a crush. This was something bigger, something dangerous. One night, he asked me to meet him at a bookstore in town, far from campus, where no one would recognize us. It was late, the shop nearly empty, the shelves casting long shadows under the dim lights. We wandered the aisles, talking about poetry, Neruda, Plath, Rilke, but the air was thick with something else, something unspoken. He reached for a book on a high shelf, his hand brushing mine, and I didn't pull away. I let it linger, the warmth of his skin against mine, and my heart raced so fast I thought it might burst. "Clara," he said, his voice low, almost a growl, "this is dangerous. For both of us." I looked up at him, my breath shallow, and whispered, "I know." And then I kissed him. It was quick, reckless, a moment of weakness that felt like strength. His hands found my face, his fingers trembling, and for a second, the world disappeared. It was just us, just that moment, just the heat of his breath and the pounding of my heart. But when we pulled apart, reality crashed in like a tidal wave. He was my professor. He was married. This wasn't just forbidden, it was a scandal waiting to happen, a bomb ticking in the background of our lives. "We can't do this again," he said, his voice hoarse, but his eyes said something else, something desperate. I nodded, but I knew I didn't mean it. Neither did he. The next few months were a blur of stolen moments, each one more reckless than the last. A locked office door after hours, the blinds drawn, our voices hushed. A late-night drive to nowhere, his hand on mine as we sat in silence, the weight of what we were doing pressing down on us. Whispers in empty hallways, his fingers brushing my arm as we passed each other on campus. Each time, we told ourselves it was the last, that we'd stop, that we'd be smarter. But it never was. I was falling for him, his mind, his intensity, the way he made me feel like I was more than just a student, like I was someone extraordinary. He'd talk about literature like it was a map to his soul, and I'd hang on to every word, memorizing the way his lips moved, the way his eyes lit up when he was passionate. But the guilt was there, too, gnawing at me like a splinter under my skin. I'd see his wedding ring glint in the light during class and feel a stab of shame, sharp and cold. I'd hear whispers on campus, students joking about his favorites, their voices dripping with innuendo, and wonder if they knew, if they could see it on my face. I was living two lives, the perfect student by day, attentive and composed, and the secret lover by night, reckless and consumed. Then came the first crack in our carefully built facade. A colleague of his, Dr. Larson, saw us at the bookstore that night. We thought we'd been careful, choosing a place far from campus, but she was there, browsing the same aisle, her eyes lingering on us, sharp and suspicious. She didn't say anything, but her gaze was like a warning shot. Elias brushed it off when I told him, his voice calm but his jaw tight. "She won't talk," he said. "She's just nosy." But I saw the worry in his eyes, the way his hands clenched when he thought I wasn't looking. That night, in his car, he grabbed my hand, his voice heavy with something I hadn't heard before. "Clara, if this gets out, it's not just my job. It's my life. My marriage. Everything." His words hit me like a punch. I'd been so caught up in the thrill, the secrecy, the way he made me feel, that I hadn't thought about the cost, not really. But now it was real, staring us in the face. We were playing with fire, and someone was bound to get burned. I wanted to say we should stop, that we should walk away before it was too late. But when he looked at me, his eyes soft and pleading, I couldn't. I was too far gone. The fear of getting caught didn't stop us, it made it worse. You'd think it would have been a wake-up call, a reason to pull back, but it didn't work that way. If anything, it pulled us closer, like the danger was fuel for the fire. The secrecy, the risk, it was intoxicating, a drug we couldn't quit. We got smarter, or so we thought. No more bookstore meetings, no more emails that could be traced. We'd meet in his car, parked in some empty lot on the edge of town, the windows fogging up as we talked, laughed, kissed. Or we'd drive an hour to a motel where no one knew us, checking in under fake names, the kind of place where the clerk didn't ask questions. Every time, I'd tell myself this was it, the last time, that I'd walk away and go back to being Clara, the good student. But then he'd look at me, say my name like it was a prayer, and I'd fall all over again, deeper each time, drowning in him. But the cracks kept growing, no matter how careful we were. His wife, Emily, started calling during our meetings. I'd hear her voice on the phone, soft and trusting, asking about his day, and the guilt would hit me like a wave, cold and suffocating. Elias would hang up quickly, his face tight, and change the subject, but I could see it, the weight of what he was doing, what we were doing. I wanted to ask about her, about their life, about the woman whose trust we were betraying. But I didn't. I was too scared of the answers, too afraid of what they'd make me feel. Instead, I leaned into the fantasy, pretending we could keep this bubble forever, that the world outside is marriage, my future, the rules we were breaking didn't exist. Then came the rumors. A classmate, Jenna, cornered me after class one day, her eyes narrowed. "You're spending a lot of time with Dr. Carter," she said, her tone sharp, like she was testing me. "People are talking." I laughed it off, my voice too high, my hands shaking in my pockets. "It's just research," I said, but my stomach twisted. That night, I told Elias, expecting him to reassure me. Instead, he went pale, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "We need to be more careful," he said, his voice low. But careful wasn't enough anymore. Dr. Larson had started asking questions, dropping hints in faculty meetings about professional boundaries. The dean called Elias in for a routine check-in, and he came back rattled, his usual confidence gone. The walls were closing in, and I could feel it, the ticking clock, the sense that our secret was slipping out of our control. I started to notice changes in him, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. He was distracted, his eyes darting to his phone during our meetings. He'd snap at me over small things, like the time I left a coffee cup in his car. "Do you know what could happen if someone saw that?" he said, his voice sharp, almost cruel. I'd never seen him like that, and it scared me. But it also made me want to hold on tighter, to prove we could make this work. I was in too deep, too in love, or whatever this was, to walk away. I'd lie awake at night, replaying our moments, the good and the bad, trying to make sense of it. Was this love? Obsession? A mistake? I didn't know anymore. Then came the letter, the one that broke everything open. It was slipped under my dorm room door, and signed, typed in cold, black ink, "End it with him, or everyone will know." My hand shook as I read it, the words blurring through my tears. Someone knew. Someone was watching us, maybe had been watching all along. I showed it to Elias the next day, my voice trembling as I handed him the paper. He read it, his face unreadable, and for a long moment, he didn't speak. "This is my fault," he said finally, his voice hollow. "I should have stopped this." I wanted to scream, to ask what we were supposed to do now, but he just pulled me into his arms and kissed me, hard, like it was the last time. And maybe, deep down, we both knew it was. We tried to pull back after that, to cool things off. No more meetings, no more late-night calls, no more stolen moments. But the distance was torture. I'd see him in class, his eyes avoiding mine, and it felt like a knife in my chest. I'd sit in the back now, hiding in the crowd, but every word he spoke still felt like it was meant for me. I started writing him letters I never sent, pouring out my heart, my guilt, my longing, pages and pages of words I couldn't say out loud. I was drowning in him, in us, in the mess we'd made, and I didn't know how to stop. The breaking point came in the spring, when the world we'd built came crashing down. I was called into the dean's office, my heart pounding as I walked across campus. Dr. Larson was there, her face cold, her eyes like daggers. The dean sat behind his desk, his expression grim. They had emails, not the ones we'd sent, but ones Elias had drafted and never sent, found on his office computer during a routine IT check. They were careful, vague, full of coded language about discussing ideas and needing to review work, but they were enough to raise questions. "Clara," the dean said, his voice measured but heavy, "we're concerned about your relationship with Dr. Carter. We need to know the truth." I denied everything, my voice shaking, my hands clenched in my lap. I lied through my teeth, saying it was just academic, just mentorship, but I could see they didn't believe me. Their eyes were too knowing, too sharp. That night, Elias called me, his voice frantic, barely recognizable. "They're suspending me pending an investigation," he said. "Clara, you need to stay quiet. Please. For both of us." I promised I would, but the weight of it was crushing me. I kept my promise. I lied to the dean, to my friends, to myself. I told everyone who asked that there was nothing between us, that the rumors were just gossip. But the whispers spread like wildfire, curling through the halls, seeping into every corner of campus. Students stared at me in class, their eyes curious or judgmental. My grades slipped, my focus shattered. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything but him. And then, one day, Emily showed up at my dorm. She was calm, too calm, her eyes red from crying, her hands steady as she stood in my doorway. "I know about you," she said, her voice soft but cutting. "He told me everything." My world stopped. My knees buckled, and I gripped the doorframe to keep from falling. She didn't yell, didn't scream, didn't call me names. She just looked at me, her face a mask of pain, and said, "You're so young. You don't even know what you've done." Then she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, my heart in pieces. Elias was fired the next week. The investigation found enough, those unsent emails, a witness who saw us at the motel, grainy security footage from that night in the bookstore, to end his career. He left town without a word, his marriage in ruins, his reputation destroyed. I thought I'd feel relief, that the weight of our secret would lift, but all I felt was emptiness. I'd loved him, or thought I did, but now I saw it for what it was, a reckless, selfish choice that hurt everyone in its path. I finished my degree, but the whispers followed me, a shadow I couldn't shake. "That's the girl who ruined Dr. Carter," they'd say, their voices low but sharp. I carried that weight, the guilt, the shame, long after I left campus, long after I tried to rebuild my life. Here's the twist, the part one didn't see coming. Years later, when I was 25 and trying to move on, I got an email from him. He was teaching again, at a small community college in another state, piecing together a new life from the ashes of the old. "I don't regret you," he wrote, his words simple but heavy. "But I regret what we cost each other." I stared at the screen, my heart racing, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to reply, to say something, anything, but I couldn't. The words wouldn't come. Because the truth is, I wasn't the victim or the villain in this story. Neither was he. We were just two people who let a spark become a fire, who let longing and desire burn through everything we held dear. And in the end, we both got burned, scarred in ways that never fully heal. What would you do if your professor crossed that line? Could you walk away from a love that felt so right, even when you knew it was so wrong? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read every single one, and I want to hear what you think. Have you ever faced a forbidden crush, a secret that changed everything? Share your story in the comments. You're not alone, and your voice matters. For more tales of love that break all the rules, stories that dig into the messy, complicated heart of human connection, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.